Welcome back to a special episode of the Wrist Check Podcast. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Perry.
And I'm Rashawn.
And we're missing our buddy today, unfortunately. He was supposed to be here, but he couldn't make it. Shout out to Ben, wherever you are. You know we love you. We got a very special guest on the couch today for you guys.
Yes.
This is someone who I probably know his face better than my own.
He's everywhere.
We got the one and only Mike Nouveau.
Woo!
What's going on, guys?
Clap it up.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, my man.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah.
And shout out to Ben, who extended the invite.
Yes.
Yeah, shout out to Ben. He actually hooked this up and was supposed to be here, but unfortunately he's dealing with a little emergency, nothing serious, but he'll be back with us shortly. But it's good to have you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. So you just got back from Miami.
Yes, I was at the original Miami Beach Antique Show.
Well, I can't wait to hear all about that.
Yeah.
Because I know you came back. You came back a little lighter than what you left with. So we're gonna get into that.
Lighter in the wallet for sure.
Yeah. Oh man. But it's only right we start with our honorary wrist check.
Cool.
Yes.
And as is tradition, we typically start with the man who never repeats a watch. So I'm gonna kick it off to my friend Rashawn. What do you got on the wrist today, sir?
Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I'm repeating a watch.
Okay.
But there's always a method to my madness.
What is the method to the madness? Say, what do you got on?
Okay. So I am wearing the trusty Rolex Cellini.
Okay.
One that I haven't worn on the show in a
Yeah,
while.
listen, so I'll take that. That's fine.
So I haven't worn this one in a while. I think I probably haven't. I don't think I wore it at all last season. I think Mary was rocking
she's been
it.
holding on to that.
She was holding on to it.
Mary's his wife.
Yes,
Okay.
so shout out to my wife. Mary was holding on to the Rolex for a while I was enjoying the Patek, the Snoopy, and a few other pieces that I introduced last season. But
What a flex.
It's good to have it back on the wrist. This one is very sentimental to me because it was the watch that I got married in.
That's right.
Not planned, but I acquired the watch between August 31st and September 1st, which I got married on September 1st. So this watch holds a huge sentiment to me, and I think for someone like yourself, that's a collector, right? Because Mike kind of collects in a way where there's a huge emotional connection. Mm-hmm. All of the pieces that he collects and that he shares with the world, there's something to it, hits the heart. And so I was like, if I'm gonna wear any watch, even if it was to be a new one or not, it's gotta strike me. And I have some new watches. I'll share them later, later in the season. But this one strikes my heart, and I had to wear this one in honor of you.
Thank you. Great.
It's a good watch. So he actually, I love that watch. He has this Jean Rousseau strap that's it's like a pink lizard strap that looks crazy fire on this piece.
Cool. Mary hates it though.
I love that combination.
Too.
I think it's great. She hates
awesome.
it though.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cellini having a moment.
Yeah.
Serious moment. I'll share next. We'll save our guest of honor for last. I'm wearing a watch I haven't worn in a while. I'm wearing my Seiko 5 Sport. This is the Kosuke Kawamura collaboration. I picked this up, I want to say in 2022.
Yeah.
I got this watch. So funny enough, when this piece was announced, I was like, I gotta have this. Mm-hmm. And the main reason why, I like vintage.
Yes.
I've been looking for the Seiko Time Sonar, which is one of my favorite Seikos. And it's a piece that has a very similar dial in one color, but it's translucent, and you can see the date wheel and everything underneath. And so this artist, Kosuke Kawamura, is a Japanese artist who his medium is collage. And so with this piece, what he did, he took all of his favorite sort of references from all of these other Seikos and sort of combined them in one. And one of them happened to have been the Time Sonar piece. Mm-hmm. And on this one, though, what they did, which was really cool, was they used 2 colorways and they splashed the orange with a little bit of the blue, which makes for some nice contrast. But I love this piece. It's one of my favorite watches. Wears a little thick on the wrist in terms of the case size.
It fits you well.
But it's fun.
Yeah, it fits you well.
It's fun.
Still.
And it's funny when you have like sort of like a dual date wheel.
Yeah.
I can't help but put it on the kanji date wheel.
Exactly.
I have no idea what it says.
Exactly.
But
it just works.
Feels a little cooler.
Also, too, the coolest thing is, our mutual friend Derek Mon.
As a matter of fact, which is funny because we were just talking about that before the camera started rolling.
I just listened to his episode from, when was that, last year?
That was later last year.
Yes.
But I purchased this from Carrot & Co.
Oh, cool. Shout out Derek.
Yeah.
Yes, shout out to Derek.
And I got another watch coming from him.
Woo!
Later this year, a Seiko as well.
He's
I
the
thought
plug.
you were going to say Boucheron.
No. But I do have a Seiko coming from Derek, so shout out to Derek. He's gonna hold one for me and Tristan.
You should.
I
Is that
shared
the one?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
the 100th anniversary piece.
So you got it. So if you guys don't know the watch that Perry's talking about, listen, you didn't watch the show. Perry, classic Perry callback.
That was funny.
To you guys. But if you've seen the previous episode, Perry shared this timepiece.
It was the Kintaro Hattori.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
What do you got on the wrist today, sir?
So I have my...
Something special.
Very special.
Well, yeah, I like special watches, I guess. Anyone who follows me on on Instagram or TikTok is probably sick of seeing this thing. This is my 1970s Cartier Coussin. It's the bamboo, they call it.
The bamboo, yeah.
I was calling it in French because it's spelled Coussin, and I was saying Coussin, and then I was dealing with some French people this week, and they're like, actually, it's Coussin.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, sorry. But yeah, that's what Cartier calls it. English speakers usually just call it the bamboo. It's quite a rare watch from the mid to late 70s. The same collection that the Cristallor was in. If you see the jumbo gondole, the tank automatic, this 1975 to 1980 era of Cartier produced a lot of very interesting stuff. And this is probably the rarest, if I have to say, of that collection. And it's just a very tricky to find watch. And I'd been looking at it and one just fell into my lap, and I had seen the prices raising quickly, and it very much was like, okay, well, that I'll never own that now, because that's, I see the prices like skyrocketing, and I'm not going to pay X amount. And then one fell into my lap for a very good price, so I grabbed it, and it's gotten like a lot of attention. It's just like emblematic of everything I love about Cartier. They're really the designers of shapes.
Yes.
So their watches are not all of them, but they're known for their shapes more so. It's not really about the movement so much with Cartier. It's a high jewelry house. It's about the beauty in the object and the shape, and I love it. I'm still obsessed with it.
Beautiful
Yeah, thank
piece.
you. Yeah.
And what's funny is you talk about rarity. The first time I'd ever seen this watch was actually in one of your videos.
Yeah.
And I think it was the one where you talked about, so we go to a lot of watch events. We're always running into one another.
Yes.
And it was almost like, your emblem, was this GMT.
Yes.
That you had. Anywhere I saw you, you were wearing that Rolex GMT.
Yes.
And I remember you put out a video kind of, breaking everyone's heart, saying that you got rid of the GMT, but you had picked this piece up.
Yes.
What was it the watch that prompted you moving the GMT out?
No, I had always, so the GMT, so the backstory is that was essentially my first watch ever.
Oh, wow.
I didn't grow up with watches, period. No one in my family had watches. I developed an interest in watches, in vintage. Again, my interest is basically solely vintage.
Yes.
So I don't really pay that much attention to new releases, et cetera, because really in terms of collecting and selling, I really focus on, let's say, 95% vintage.
Right.
So the first watch I ever bought was that Rolex GMT, this reference 1675 with the fuchsia insert. And actually what's funny is I got bought out of a rent stabilized apartment in the East Village, and I used some of that money to buy my first watch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. This is however 9 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I hear stories that people started collecting when they're 15 and now they're 45.
Yeah.
I haven't been collecting that long for how quickly it's like encompassed my entire life.
Yeah.
So I bought that GMT. It wasn't like a perfect watch. The dial was very nice and the bezel was very nice. The case was probably 7 out of 10. I didn't care at the time. And then, I just kind of wanted to move on from it. And the reaction I got from selling it, actually I traded it. The reaction I got from my follower, like, how could you do this? Like, oh my God, like, do you regret it? Because people still comment on, this is however many months ago, people comment today, oh, do you regret it? I'm like, no, honestly, I don't. For something like that, I'm just not, I don't have the, I don't know, nostalgia or the sentimentality about that particular watch. I don't know. I realized it was my first watch, but I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, I think that's really interesting though, because I think for a lot of people, a Rolex GMT, and especially that particular reference, that was a 1675,
Yes.
right? That's like something that a lot of people aspire to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This being your first watch, you being new to watches at that time, how did you arrive at like, this is the one that I'm going to get?
So I had a friend, another one of my major interests was men's fashion and like a kind of a niche segment of men's fashion, which was like kind of artisanal design, like avant-garde-ish clothing, like, 15 years ago. And I had a friend who kind of was also into that world, and he's like, are you into watches? I said, I don't know anything about watches. He said, oh, check it. He's like, I have this separate Instagram account with just watches, check it out. And I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, these are cool. And he's like, yeah, you should like look into getting one. Like, they're getting hotter and hotter. Like, they're harder and harder to get. It's like, I know you like collecting the clothes. This is a similar thing. And he kind of basically showed me what to look for, how to look, where to look. And I knew I wanted a Rolex. And I just, the GMT, the Pepsi, quote unquote, is the one that I was drawn to. I thought it was very unique. And I probably did a year of research before I bought one. And they were cheaper then too.
Sure.
They weren't
where they are.
Yeah, exactly.
They weren't $1,000, but I mean, they were also weren't, 20,000. So they were definitely cheaper. And I got it. And then, I have a very obsessive personality. And when I'm into something, I'm really into something. So I did like insane research. By the time I bought the watch, I could probably tell you about like the top 50 Rolex references ever. Like I already had like a lot of knowledge for not owning a watch. And then, I continued, I bought it, I wore it, participated in the forums and stuff like that. And I would learn more about other watches. And then I started, finding deals on watches that I didn't necessarily want to own, but I knew maybe somebody would, and there was some value there. So I started, I was experimenting with flipping and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I got the first one.
Wow.
So funny enough, you mentioned you sort of collecting fashion, kind of the transition into watches. I always find it like really interesting, but it never surprises me that people who collect watches tend to collect other things.
Yes, definitely.
And you talking about sort of like your perspective into, I'm doing the research, I'm diving all the way in if I'm going to spend my money, I think sort of speaks to me about, it resonates with me on a level, what I know of your background in music as a DJ. I want to talk about that a little bit because I feel like there is a shared spirit. I imagine you collect records.
Actually, you know what? I didn't really, but I didn't really, but everyone I knew did, and it would have been very easy for me to fall into that. I just happened to avoid it, but it wasn't intentional.
Wow.
But you are a music head.
Yeah, or I was.
You
Yeah,
was.
I burned out a little bit, but yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So were you DJing around the time when you fell into watches?
Yes, definitely.
What was that transition like?
I was DJing up until COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was definitely doing watch stuff and selling some watches as I was DJing.
Yeah.
So the transition was very easy because I was already like obsessed with watches, and I was losing interest rapidly in nightlife and fashion. In my mid 30s, I was like, oh God, am I going to do this forever?
Right.
The other thing with DJing is like, unless you're like a world famous DJ, which I wasn't, the money doesn't change much year after year.
Yeah, it's kind of stable.
Yeah, I had friends that were like casually in nightlife, but they also had careers on the side. And like I remember in like 2007 being like, you have to go home early and like go to sleep and wake up and go to your office job. Meanwhile, now those people are like VPs in their companies, and I'm making like not that much more than I was then.
Wow.
So it was, to me, it was an easy transition because I was rapidly losing interest in nightlife. And my interest in watches was rapidly multiplying. So really the transition was like, it was pretty natural. And also it didn't hurt that like watches kind of exploded during COVID as well. Yes. And nightlife ended, like hit a brick wall.
It's like perfect timing.
Yeah, it really, really was. And I have some friends who were in the similar situations to me where they were like still DJing, and then like COVID hit, and I was like, okay, now this is the opportunity to do something else, and, like figure this out.
Yeah.
Right.
And then like a few of them kind of just like stuck through DJing and are still DJing, and they're still making that like whatever small amount per night. I was like, oh God, now you're 40 and doing this.
Yeah.
Like we were nervous
yeah.
when we were 30. Like, I mean, if you can make it work, please.
Do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, but like,
But you found your way out of that.
yeah, thank God. Thank God. Yeah. But I was never a world famous DJ, you know. So I mean, if your career is popping off, then like good for you. But if you're just doing the normal grind, yeah, it's harder.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, you know, because when you were talking about how you found the 1675,
Yes.
right, and then kind of like diving in and being obsessed, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but in how you source pieces, you can tell that if you're consumed with something, like it translates into like your professional career and what you source. So like Cartier, like like you dive into it deep, and like you're one of like, you know, those like top guys that really source like the best of the best in Cartier. How did that come about for you to kind of like go ahead and say, you know what, Rolex is cool, like, you know, the first like 100 references I can spit from the top of my dome, to then going into Cartier, which is like very, very niche. There's so many things that you don't see that like you have to, you know, really be devoted to it.
So Cartier to me, because, you know, I learned, you know, enough about Rolex, and all the information for Rolex is out there. And to me, I thought it was interesting that Cartier, which is what, the number one or number two or number three selling brand, or three or four.
It's like top three.
Yeah, it's
it's one of the top three selling watch brands, period, on earth. Yet there's such little information out there, like there is for Rolex, about their vintage stuff. There's no serial number lists, really. There's no way, because I went into it thinking, you know, years ago, thinking like, okay, what tank do I want? Because I should have a tank.
Yeah. Just
like you should have a sub and like a Speedmaster or whatever. Like I want a tank. And I was like, wow, this is actually tricky.
Yeah.
This is not as easy as finding out, oh, this is a maxi dial sub, or this is a meters first sub, and this is the year that it's from. It's way trickier than that for Cartier. It's, you know, you really have to do a deep dive. You have to look at the movement. You have to look at the type of engraving. You have to look at each hallmark. And I was like, wow, this is like very interesting, because it's like a puzzle. So not only do I love the watches, the story is highly fascinating. And I can't believe it's such a mainstream brand, yet the history is so unknown.
Yeah.
And like people, I didn't know this at the time, but you know, I would go on to find pieces that I had never seen before. Like imagine finding a Rolex that never has been seen before. That's not even possible.
Yeah.
Which is interesting too, right? Because, you know, I think one of the words that you used was like really dedicating to.
Yeah.
And with a brand like Cartier, you really do have to like dedicate time, because there's so much that is unknown.
Yes.
It's like, it's almost, and it feels like Cartier was a big shift for you, because almost exclusively this is kind of what I see you talking about on the daily.
Well, yes, and I don't want people to think that I'm 100% all in on only Cartier.
Yes.
And like, you know, because it's kind of like bubble-like behavior sometimes. It's, you know, it's like you don't want it to get too hot too fast, and then it just burns out.
Yeah.
And people lose interest. But yeah, I didn't see it as that much of a shift. I've always loved dress watches. Like I love, even with Rolex, I love a date 8. You know, I love date 8s or gold date just. So I didn't see it as that much of a. I mean, the tank is a iconic watch. So I didn't see it that much of a departure. Like if you're into Patek Philippe dress watches, you can easily be into Cartier dress watches, and I'm also into Patek Philippe dress watches. So
Just put the caveat out there.
So see, I was like, wow, this is like, if you could learn this, you could really like, first of all, discover some treasures as a collector, and really kind of like a good part of your business, if you're looking at it as a dealer, if you could become like a trusted authority on this, then you could really have a leg up. And I'm far from an expert there. What's interesting about this is it's probably how researching Cartier is probably similar to how people were collecting things in like the 80s or 90s pre-internet, where you have to talk to other collectors, other researchers and scholars.
Yeah.
So there are, I mean, the people that I've gathered information from know way more than me. I mean, to shout some out, Kevin Odell is a real expert. People follow him on Instagram they did on Instagram, like people like Eric Koo, Justin Grunberg, Ronnie Madvani, the late George Kramer, like Harry Fain. These people are like, these are who I learned from. And if not directly, then reading from their writings or their Instagram posts or even their sales listings.
Yes.
The dealers who have old sales listings up, like that's a little time capsule. Those are really, really beneficial. So all these people know far more than I do. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. And I'm sure this is what it was like collecting records in the 80s of old like punk and hardcore bands. I'm sure it's very similar. You have to learn from word of mouth, and that's basically it. There's no guide. There's no like, there's mattdial5513.com or something. It doesn't really exist. It doesn't really exist for Cartier. And I just find it like so extremely interesting. The other, not to keep going on and on about this, but the other interesting thing is that before like 1970, the number of watches Cartier was producing was like infinitesimal. It's like they were making a couple of thousand watches per year. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Yep.
So that's why I try to explain.
Limited.
Like at the Miami Beach Antique Show, I found a cool 60s Cartier Benoit, and the fact that 60s is what made it rare. So I had to present this in video. Like, why is this $15,000 and not when you see the similar looking ones for $6,000 online? It's because of this. They made a handful of these. It's a backwind. It's a Jaeger-LeCoultre movement. It's like, hand engraved, essentially handmade. And that's why this one's $15,000 and the one that looks to you exactly the same is, because this was an era where very few were produced.
Yes.
Right. So you actually brought some examples with you today. I want to talk about this one right here on the green strap.
Sure.
You can grab that piece. So this is a beautiful example. Can you talk about what this is?
Sure. This is a Cartier Cristallor. So it's from the same exact era and same collection as the Coussin. And what's interesting about this one is that it has the Bahraini emblem on top, like in gold. And this is just like you see the Conjars on Rolexes and Pateks. This was ordered most likely by the Bahraini kingdom, the Kingdom of Bahrain, whether the royal family or the government or somebody close to them. And they put their emblem on it, just like you would see a Conjar or a Caboose signature on an old Rolex.
Yes.
And what's also interesting about this is Cartier moved their logo from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock to make room for, and that's a way to authenticate it. Not that there's really any doubt about authenticity with this, but with Rolexes, sometimes you see the Conjar off to the side and you're like, this could have been added. But sometimes you'll see like the UAE symbol replacing the Rolex logo or replacing the Daytona text. And that is like really, really crazy for a brand to kind of defer to whoever was ordering it. So this is like a really rare example. It's an insane condition.
And this is part of your personal collection?
Yeah, this is my personal collection.
How did this one fall into your hands?
So what's funny is I had always wanted a Cristallor. That's the name of the shape, the Cristallor. And when I was in Japan a year and a half ago, or a year and a few months ago, I actually saw one on Yahoo Japan, which is basically the Japanese eBay.
Yes.
Which is where I'd been buying like clothes and stuff for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So I'd been using this site to find rare clothes, Yohji Yamamoto, Paul Herndon, et cetera, like 15 or longer years ago. And you would pay a proxy service to place a bid for you because you had to have like a Japanese whatever account. And they would bid and they would win and they would mail it to you. So I was in Tokyo and I see one of these pop up on Yahoo Japan for like nothing. I don't remember. It was like $3,000, maybe a little more. And so you have to use Google Translate. I'm translating. I see the guy's, I think it was Line, like that app Line. It's like WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And so he has it listed. So I sent him a message using Google Translate. I said, hi, is this available? He says, yes. I say, I'm actually in Tokyo now. He's like, okay, come to our office. I said, oh, awesome. Okay, perfect. So I go to the office. He shows me the watch. I give him my business card and he sees that I'm a dealer. And I guess, I don't know if he did a quick Googling or whatever. And he's like, oh, okay, I can like show you like wholesale pricing on all these other, he had like 1,000 Datejust and all this other stuff.
Oh, wow.
That we ended up buying. But I was like, so he's like, for this, this was like $3,000. I was like, and I was looking and I was like, I mean, it's a no brainer. Like in my head, I'd probably budgeted $15,000 for it. Like if like max price I would be willing to pay. $3,000, like definitely I'll take it. No doubt.
So did this gentleman? So of course this guy has like
Yeah, it was an office
like,
of like a
and,
wholesale. Yeah.
just a unlimited amount of watches. Did this gentleman know exactly what he had? Like,
I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he knew that it was an older Cartier. But if I handed this to you, what are you Googling?
Yeah.
it's very true.
So you know
It's
what I mean.
true.
So, yeah. I mean, I don't know what he knew, but he priced it this way. Also, even if you know what it is, there's no live price comps anywhere.
Yes.
So you know they're pretty uncommon. So I bought it. I was quite happy. Go home, and also I kind of started a relationship with his dealer now. Now I could buy stuff from him from the States if I needed to. So I go home. I make a video about it. People are like, what's funny is I'll make a video about this, and then I'll see something like on Reddit or in like Rolex forums like 3 days later, looking for a Cristallor, want to buy a Cristallor. I'm like, no one has mentioned a Cartier Cristallor online anywhere Googleable for 5 years.
Yeah.
Now
Yes.
suddenly people are looking for them. And then my friend Ben from Watch Brothers London sends me a message. She goes, "Oh, did you see this?" And another dealer had just gotten this watch. So the Cristallor, but with the Bahraini emblem on it. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, damn it. Now I want that one. That one's even better. So I was like, okay, so many people had hit me up about the one I found in Japan. I could probably sell that and buy this one.
Yes.
Oh wow.
So basically that's what I did. I sold the one I got in Japan, which was really funny because I told people I would never sell it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But then, I was selling it for another one that was even better. So I put it on the market. I sold it. I used the money. I don't think I even had to add any money to buy the new one. And I bought that one. I had this, came in from a dealer based in Dubai.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
so funny.
And then I got this bracelet made by Jean Rousseau. And what's funny about this bracelet is this is my highest viewed video of all time. The production of this strap, because they let me film. Jean Rousseau let me film start to finish the construction of this strap, and it has like 14 million views. It's my biggest video by far.
awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the story with this guy.
That's so funny. And what's interesting is when you think about it too, we were talking about just the education that takes place when you dive into Cartier from a dealer's perspective, but maybe even also, from a client perspective, there's a lot of deals to be had. And a lot of come ups to be had if you actually do the education and you know what it is
yes.
you're looking at.
Yes.
You can really, really, really clean up.
Yeah.
You mentioned making the video for this.
Yes.
So obviously, I think a lot of people today know you from your TikTok videos.
I was unknown really in the dealer world before. I mean, I knew the big dealers and that was about it. Now it's like I have a lot more contacts because of these videos. It's true.
Yeah, but you started dealing on your own, and then you wound up with the gentleman at
Craft and Tailored.
Craft and
Yes.
and Tailored.
Yes.
How did that relationship come about? What was that like?
So basically, I was just doing casual stuff on the side, and I had found a big watch. I've told this story before. I found a big watch on Facebook,
Okay.
and I needed somebody to finance it, and I basically made the deal.
When you
with
say big watch, what watch?
it was a Patek Philippe 3700J. It was a yellow gold Nautilus, the original Nautilus.
Yes.
And I knew it was underpriced. And I basically made a deal to buy it without having any money, none. And I was like, I know, because I knew how dealers worked. I knew that, people finance other people's deals and someone finds it and someone else pays for it. And so I was like, okay, I will message a few dealers and let's see who responds. So I messaged Cameron first. And he's like, yeah, go get it. Get on the plane, go get it. And I'll wire the money. And that's basically what we did.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he said, we can do this for more than just like museum worthy watches. We can do this for Datejust and subs as long as there's margin.
Absolutely.
Yes. Wow.
And that's basically how it started.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so funny. And so now you're like, you stepped out on your own.
Yes.
You've got this booming TikTok page.
Yeah, I guess you
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I can't go into TikTok without seeing you.
right. Yeah.
Yes.
Apologies for that.
No, but honestly, and honestly speaking, I think it's so great to see where like watches as an industry and as a culture is going today because, just from the perspective of maybe someone on the outside, they can now look at it as entertainment, but also like informational.
Yes.
Right. And I think you do a really great job at straddling both lanes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. Because you're learning an incredible amount of information through the research that you're doing about the watches that you're selling, but you don't make it like a drag to watch. It's like actually fun. It's entertaining. You have created almost like you're not a character, but it's like what people know of you from your videos.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
like this is branded, right?
Yes.
This is Mike Nouveau.
Yes.
What's that experience been like for you?
Pretty crazy, unexpected. I'm glad it happened to something I'm so obsessed with.
Yeah.
It certainly makes it easier because the work that goes into these videos is a lot.
It's
And
a lot.
And I post every single day, more or less.
Yeah.
So as I was saying earlier, it's like you have to make like a 1 or 2 minute documentary every single day.
What was TikTok like when you first got into it?
There
As
was-
far as like the watch
Yeah.
landscape.
There was barely any watch content on there.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of friends that were on there who did like men's fashion stuff, and they were like pressuring me to get on. They're like, "You should really get on. There's no watch stuff." I'm like, "I don't know if anyone cares about this." But I met my friend Isaac, who does like New York City content, nightlife content, fashion stuff. He had like seen his life change really because of TikTok.
Really?
Yeah, and he's a DJ and does fashion stuff. And Isaac Likes, for anyone who wants to check him out, Isaac Likes. He started during COVID. I started much later, and he really watched his like gigs go up, his pay go up, like attention, everything because of this page. And I was like, okay, this is like a little interesting. Meanwhile, I wasn't going to start it for the sake of making money. My first few videos ever were just watch spotting videos without me in them, without any information.
I remember
Yes,
those.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And
Actually, Ben was
in
in
my
one.
second video. Ben was in my second video ever.
We'll have to share
Ben
that.
was in my
Yes.
second video ever.
Yes.
So I did one video. Literally, I was sitting in Tompkins Square Park, and I was like, "What if there's a video of someone, an account where someone just goes up to people and asks what they're wearing?" And my friend Bailey kind of helped me develop this idea because he kind of approached me with his phone recording, be like, "What's on your wrist?" And he kind of gave me the idea.
Yeah.
And that same day, I like went out and I just did one, and the first video ever got like a few 100,000 views.
Wow.
I was like, okay, wow, this is like
How
quite.
did you convince that this was a random stranger?
No, this was somebody I knew. 'Cause
Okay.
it was like a test. It was like a pilot. It was
Sure.
like and also the other thing is like it was never meant to be complete strangers. People are like, "Oh, you know this person." I'm like, "Yeah, I know everybody in the New York watch world." Like if someone's wearing like a 3940, I probably know them. The idea was never like, "Oh, you don't know this person. I'm not running up to these people with the camera filming."
Because I was
what's on your
curious.
wrist?"
'Cause I was
Yeah.
like, what's that process?
But it kind of works because it's like, for those that know, it's like, yes, you know these people, but it's also very organic where it's like the person is caught off guard or like they kind of
But
like
did
show
you-
their true self. Like it's
But
Right.
did you know Ben when you got him on?
Yes, I did know Ben, but we were
Okay.
friends from the watch world.
Got you.
But there are absolutely completely organic ones also where I'm approaching people. It's a little tough to approach people about like something valuable that they're wearing.
But they're like, whoa.
I'd say in the first year, because I do far less like watch spotting now.
Yes.
Those videos I do far less. But in the first year, I'd say like 80% were strangers.
Wow.
Again, I'm not running up to them already filming. I'm stopping
You
them.
talking to them about it first
I
and
stay
everything.
back 8 feet. I have my business card in my hand. I say, hey, I make these videos about watches. Do you mind if I ask you what's on your wrist? And then I start recording. So it was never supposed to be like a, hey, what are you wearing? Like it was never.
The guy's like, ugh.
But some people in the comments are like, oh, you know this person. I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. This is about what people are wearing on the streets.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, it just popped off like very quickly. And I was never even going to show my face.
I want
there.
to speak about that too.
Yeah.
But please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Of course. So I did like, I don't know, 5 videos. And then the comments were like, how do I buy a vintage watch? What do I look for when buying a vintage watch? Who could sell me a vintage watch?
Yes.
Who do I trust? I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna have to like talk to these people now.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to like
Yes.
face the camera. And then I started doing videos. One of the early ones was like, I'm a vintage watch dealer, just so you know. Like I'm a vintage watch dealer. This is what I do for a living. And I would answer questions. And then it kind of like quickly I found other concepts besides just watch spotting videos, because the watch spotting videos actually like fell off a little bit like after I did like 60 of them.
What happens is then other people kind of start.
Yes, exactly. Then it
jumping
like
on
kind
the
of
wave.
oversaturates. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So about 6 months in, a million other like watch talk accounts started, and most of them didn't last. But there was a moment where a lot of them were gaining
a lot
quick.
of traction. Yes.
Yeah, and this is not. I'm not talking about like the 47th Street dudes. I mean more just like random people just doing green screen videos in Florida or Indiana or whatever.
Yeah.
With really like not that much to contribute.
Yes.
And those accounts largely disappeared.
Yes.
I think being in New York and being outside is like the most important part. And I think that's something that people on TikTok in general look for. It's a lot of it is like outsiders looking in.
Yeah.
And I feel like New York is a character in my in my videos.
Definitely.
And I get so many comments like, is this what people are really like in New York? Or is this what really happens in New York? And people are like, oh, people don't wear Rolexes on the streets in New York. You'll get robbed. I'm like, you have no idea. You clearly have never been here.
Yes, exactly.
So that was kind of the trajectory of the videos. And then, I didn't get my first, I didn't get the first million views for like a long time. Cause like I'd say like a million view video is like kind of the mark of like, okay, I can consider this viral.
Yeah.
But it was like, I got the first, the first 10 videos were in the 6 figures of views. And I was in a group chat with a bunch of other like men's fashion creators. And they're like, do not get used to this. This is not normal. Yeah. And they were right, because like after the initial surge, like it does come back to reality.
Oh yeah.
I remember I did a video, which was just like a very rapid slideshow, like a video slideshow of like 50 watches I had handled in like the last week. And it was literally, the caption was just like, oh, here are the watches I handled last week. And I set it to music. And I was like, wow, if this video does well, then like I can make 1 million of these videos. And this is like such a good, because finding the content is the hard part. Yes. So like if this video pops off, like I can just do one of these every week. And it flopped so hard that it basically cursed my page for the next like 24 videos until I caught back up. Because sometimes you will have a video that hits a brick wall.
Yes.
And then you see all the previous videos hit a brick wall too.
Yes. Wow.
Like the algorithm will really punish you. So then I was like, okay, I really need to like step this up and figure out like what people want to see.
Yeah. So to that point, right? I want to talk about your transition and your pivot.
Sure.
Because you go from not being in front of the camera to having to be front and center because there's a demand for you.
Yeah.
Right? And very similar, like we share the same vein because we aren't the traditional watch media guys, right? The same as like, you don't have the watch dealer starter pack. And we know what that is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, wearing hiking boots and like sugarcane denim and like that, like that's our thing.
With sugarcane, but yes.
No, but I'm just saying in general, it's just like, like we don't look like the traditional
For sure.
watch media guy, watch dealer guy, etc. Right? And I think how you caught fire was the fact that for the real ones, like they can see themselves in you, right? The same as like people see themselves in Rich Check Pod. They're like, oh man, like you have an everyday dude who like doesn't look rich and famous and this and that, and like meeting people literally on the street level, ground level. Can you speak to that? Like, was that something intended? Did it just organically happen?
It wasn't intended. It's just like the way I am. And I've never really been afraid to speak my opinion. However, it was a hurdle to put myself on camera because as like a adult, like above average TikTok age.
Yeah.
I was always love that. Yeah. I was, and also like I come from my whole life was like skateboarding. I was into punk and hardcore. Like authenticity was like the most important thing. And for some,
it's like part of your spirit. It's who you are. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter much these days, but like, but to get in front of the, I'd been in nightlife for 15 years. I'd been, people knew me as a DJ, but I was never like putting out content where I was talking to the camera or making jokes. I'm like, it's very, very, very easy to be corny.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Like it's so, and I had seen like people who put themselves out there a little too much, pre-TikTok. And I always think like, okay, this person, like, this is a risk because you're always going to, it's really a thing where it's like letting your, like the fear of becoming corny or looking dumb is going to prevent you from maybe succeeding. Whereas, I would see people put themselves out there and then maybe hit it and succeed. I'm like, okay, damn, that's crazy because I'll never do that. Because I don't have the confidence to really do something like this. In a previous life. I think with TikTok, I did have to get over the fact that people are going to see me like, what is Mike doing?
Yeah.
Like, but
people outside of your world.
Yeah,
they're
for
like,
sure. Because I knew
what the heck is
like my
this?
Instagram friends were going to see this. Like,
yes.
Yeah. And what's funny is there are certain videos that I don't even put because just in the last few months, I finally relented and started putting the videos onto Reels as well.
Yes.
Because it was just TikTok at first, nothing on Instagram.
Yeah.
I didn't want Instagram followers. Instagram was more like my personal page. Then reluctantly, I started putting them on Reels. I probably should have done it earlier. But there are certain things where I'll watch this video. I'll be like, I don't want like the real watch heads to see this on Instagram. So let me leave this one. Let me leave this one on TikTok. Like if it's a little too corny or a little bit like meme like, or if it's like talking about hype watches or what Rolex is doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to see like, I don't need like the real Patek, like 70-year-old collectors seeing me like this. So let me keep this one on TikTok and I'll put the rest on Instagram. But yeah, I am very aware of, again, I think Derek does a very good job. Derek,
Yes.
I think he does a very
Derek
good
does an excellent job.
He's
really
awesome.
And I think a lot of the what's also funny is I never really consumed watch media before this.
Yes.
I was never like a YouTube person. I didn't subscribe to anyone. I didn't watch. It was only since TikTok that people were like, oh, what do you think of Nico Leonard, who is the man? But I didn't know who he was before I was on TikTok because I didn't consume any of this. So getting in front of the camera, or getting back to what you asked, getting in front of the camera was like, I was like, okay, I'm either going to do this or I'm not. At least I know what I'm talking about. At least I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just had to do it, and it paid off. Obviously, it was worth it. And now I'm sure people like I know from back in the day are like, what the hell is he doing? I'm like, what is he doing?
Exactly.
I'm sure people are, but whatever. I think with every.
But I think the cool thing is too, right, is that it worked.
Yeah, thank God.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God, because that's the worst. Putting yourself out there and it didn't
That shit
work.
didn't work.
That should be the name of the episode. Thank God it worked.
Thank God it worked.
You're right.
But that is like the major difference, because it's intimidating putting yourself out
Definitely,
there,
yes.
and people are going to be like, what's this guy doing? I
Yeah.
know this guy from, but then when it
100%.
works, and then everyone's like,
100%.
oh, I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my friend.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
Mike,
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. You like, man.
Yeah, you nailed 100%.
Yes.
That's exactly what it's like. I'm sure it's the same starting a podcast.
Yes.
It was
100%.
Yeah.
Like, you guys talk about watches?
Yeah.
Like, what's there to talk about? Yeah. And now we have amazing guests, and everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's my boy. He was doing the joint with.
You brought another watch here, which
Yeah.
I think is super interesting.
Yes.
We've only ever had one other example on the show, the Boucheron.
Yes. Oh, I love this thing.
It's beautiful.
These are so underrated and undervalued.
Very underrated. So we had our friend Elias was on the show.
Love him.
Yes.
Shout out Elias.
Yes.
I think the
He's part
most
of the Boucheron
incredible
boys.
laugh. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
His is on the strap. I've never seen
Yes.
the bracelet. This thing is beautiful.
This thing is completely amazing. For those who know Boucherons, and it's similar to Cartier in that they're a luxury a high jewelry house who made watches, and they still make watches, but they didn't really make that much more than what you're kind of seeing here. This is called the Reflet, REFLET. And this one's from the late 1950s. They patented this amazing bracelet attachment system. So if you see, I could slide the bracelet out just like that.
Yeah.
And from both sides, it comes off so easy, but it clicks this thing is, however many years old, 70 years old.
Yeah.
It clicks in so satisfyingly.
Yeah.
And
Even
it's
the
very,
sound.
very secure. It's amazing. And they patented this in 1941 or something like that. And there's no branding on the dial. Some of them have it, but this one has nothing. It's pink gold. The brick bracelet with the hobnail is completely insane.
Yes.
Gorgeous.
Everything about this, the dial's hobnail, the case is hobnail, the crown is hobnail. What's funny is I don't know if anyone can see this, but there's a hallmark stamped right into the hobnail case.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is hobnail. There was nowhere else to put it.
Yes.
The other thing that's funny is that the back of this has a hand engraving. It says Boucheron Paris. And then there's a hand engraved Omega, Greek Omega symbol. And the reason they did that is because it has an Omega movement inside. Yeah, because again, like Cartier, they were not necessarily making their own movements at the time. But, they had to put something in these watches. And I think I paid $5,000 for this. If this had Cartier on it, it'd be $50,000.
Oh, for sure. All day.
I love this thing. And I have another one in white gold on a leather strap.
Yeah.
But I think these are so incredibly undervalued.
So when you come across those, do you decide to keep them? Do you
this is-
source some? I know that one is in your personal
Yeah, this
collection,
one's
but
personal. I'll absolutely source them. They're so not that expensive that it's almost not even worth sourcing. Because don't forget, if I'm covering shipping, I need a shipping label from the dealer to me, then from me to the client, that could be $200 right there.
Right.
So it's if my margins are only whatever percent, it's not always worth it to do cheaper watches. But yeah, I think these are so. I'll continue buying these, whether to sell or to keep as I find them. Like the white gold one, I bought it for myself.
Yes.
What's
Even
the
though I already had this
demand
one.
on
Not strong.
Yeah,
I'd
I don't
say.
think
Not-
very many
not
people
yet
are still
anyway.
aware. Yeah.
Yeah, people ask me about them, and there's people online who collect them for sure. But I wouldn't say there's a demand like there is for Cartier, but it's a complete.
But it's
sleeper.
coming up. I'm sure over the last couple of years, you've seen more interest growing.
Yeah, definitely. There's books about Boucheron, They were a big competitor to Cartier. They're still around. They're amazing.
How did this piece find its way to you?
I found it at a dealer in London who had it valued at like low. I think again I paid $5,000. It's a full gold,
Crazy.
gold on $5,000. That is insane.
Let me see this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean,
gorgeous.
if you would have said like, oh, I got it for like, $8 to $10,000, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, $5,000, that's a steal.
I love this thing.
Yeah, this thing is beautiful.
Yeah. Cool, right?
Yeah, this is an amazing example. And the bracelet really just kicks it up another level.
And there's like hallmarks everywhere. There's hallmarks in the
Yeah.
glass. There's like multiple hallmarks.
It's so crazy. I had no idea that Omega made movements for them.
Yeah.
Wild.
It's cool, right?
Yeah. That's sick, man.
I want to ask. I don't know if you want to share, but
Sure.
you had recently sold a piece to an NBA basketball player, Tyrese Halliburton, right?
The man.
I mean, it's funny now, right? Because you have, pop culture and people of influence now getting into this hobby, and they are looking to reputable sources.
Yes.
And I think it's amazing that, somebody in that space being a professional, they came to you directly, right? Because they could buy resources to kind of like get them
Totally.
there. Can you talk to, can you share that? Because I know you and Watch Girl Off Duty,
Zoe.
like kind of Zoe's closed the deal. Shout out to her.
out to
She's
Zoe.
amazing.
She'll
Shout
be
out
on
to
the show
Zoe.
soon.
Cool.
But how did that come about? If you could share.
Basically, Tyrese, who should be on the Knicks, I wish he was on the Knicks.
Yeah.
He just sent me a DM, and again, he was totally cool with doing content and making the videos. That's the only reason I'm even saying this, and the reason he was in the video. If there's any basketball players or celebs out there who want to do, I'm happy to sign an NDA.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
Tyrese in particular was cool to do a video. So that's the only reason I'm even talking about him as a client or whatever, is because I know he's cool with it. Yeah, he reached out and he wanted to crash, and I was able to. It's not a complicated story. And I said, I will hand deliver it as long as we can come to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he is like, God, what a talent he is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's killing. He's
Yeah.
he's becoming like the new face of the league.
Absolutely. And he has amazing taste in watches too.
Yeah.
And like a lot of these younger guys are developing really exceptional
You know,
taste.
what's great is, and I think, to some degree, you're part of the contribution to that, right? Because I think when you think about it, what's great about what you do, and even in that experience, it really reveals how the watch industry has changed, right? The content that you make, because think about it, like to collecting watches are already very niche.
Yes.
Now they go into vintage.
Yes.
Where are these guys getting that education from? Right? Where are they developing the interest?
Yeah.
It's happening via social media.
Yeah.
It's happening through the content that they're consuming that, people like yourself are creating. And then to take it to the next level where there's actually like commerce being created out of that right now, right? I mean, this is the perfect example of even like, we talked to Ben Clymer about, the idea of content to commerce.
Yes.
Like this is like the perfect example of how you creating content, you taking your passions, your interests can transform itself into a viable business.
Yes.
And I think there's something to be said for that in terms of where the watch industry is coming to where it is now.
Yeah.
Right.
There's also a lot of people talking about kind of the same old thing. My taste has always been a little bit more niche. And again, with the Cartier, Boucheron, Piaget, there's not that much information out there. There's not that many people talking about it. So if you don't want a Rolex, what do you do? If you have insane wealth, fame, power, maybe you don't want the same watch as everybody else. And, I think one of the routes you could take is FP Journe and Kari Voutilainen, or you can go Cartier, Boucheron, you could go a million different directions. But certainly there's enough people with money, fame, whatever, who are looking for some guidance. And one of the options is the stuff that I talk about.
Yeah.
So it's not like a massive surprise that people are kind of heading this way, because, people don't want to play Rolex games.
Yes.
I think Rolex games send people to vintage.
Yes.
And then I think once you spend enough time in vintage, you venture outside of Omega and Rolex. And then, one of the routes is Patek. And I'm also in the Patek rabbit hole. And I mean, once you start learning about 1940s and 50s and 60s Patek. I mean, really, you're like, okay, there's no better than this.
Yes.
And in some cases, that's true.
Yes.
But another route is Cartier and these more, artful watches.
Mm-hmm. I have a question in regards to some of the clientele.
Sure.
I'm curious, what are you starting to see coming up that maybe we should, or some of our listeners and viewers should take a look at in terms of interest? With a lot of the clients that you're talking to now, because obviously, like we talked about Rolex being kind of pedestrian, you're getting into, brands like Boucheron.
Right.
Are you getting like any interesting requests that are sort of like piquing your interest? And like, wow, I never really thought that people were taking a look at this.
I don't know if I'm getting requests that are like surprising me. I get requests for the stuff I talk about, which
Right.
makes sense. What's funny is I could actually, 3 years ago, my interests were mostly 4-digit vintage Rolex.
Mm-hmm.
And now pricing, like you couldn't, like I'm not buying subs or anything right now. And many people are not. And if your expertise is only vintage Rolex, you might be a little nervous right now.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of vintage Rolexes out
There's
there.
a ton.
Yes.
So it's not like, and the market is pretty, it's like people know what everything costs. They know what 14060 should cost,
Yes.
and you're not going to make a fortune on it, which is fine. What's funny is that I do so much with the dress watches and like the watches from jewelry houses and stuff like that, is that now I'm almost being like, maybe I should start buying up 4-digit Rolexes again, like I was 3 years ago, because like people are not asking for them. So maybe that means I should be buying them.
Yeah.
Buy up all that, the low stock.
Yeah. I mean, I still buy date 8s and date just for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's always the love and appreciation for Rolex that's still there.
Definitely, of course. Obviously, Rolex is not going anywhere. Vintage Rolex is not going anywhere. But I think in terms of auction prices and stuff like that, exceptional in rarity and exceptional in condition are still breaking records.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. You've got one of the last examples here
Yeah.
I wanted to save.
That's a stunning
This
piece.
really
So
interesting
cool.
piece on a beautiful, beautiful bracelet. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, so this is one of the ones I just picked up at the Miami Beach Antique Show. This is, out of all the watches I bought, this is the only one left, and I think this will sell today or tomorrow, to be honest. What's interesting about this, well, first of all, the most interesting thing is the fact that it's on the 18-karat Cartier Beads of Rice bracelet, which is rare.
Very rare.
It's rare. It's rare to find a Cartier bracelet like this on a Cartier watch. And if you want a bracelet added, the pricing is insane. I mean, imagine what it costs just to go into Cartier and buy a gold bracelet.
Yeah.
So this is why I bought this watch, because of the bracelet. The bracelet's amazing, and also it has removable links, which is pretty unique for these.
Yeah.
A lot of times you have to cut them or have a jeweler cut and solder them.
it. Yeah.
It's really, really awesome. The other interesting thing, which might be a turnoff to some people, but I find it quite interesting. This thing is quartz.
Yes.
This is a quartz, which is not rare for Cartier. Many Cartiers today are quartz. What's interesting about this is, if you were wearing this, there is zero way to tell that this is a quartz watch.
Yes.
Even with the modern examples, there's some that only exist in quartz. So if you see it, you know it's quartz.
Yes.
This has the exact same dial as every other Tank Louis Cartier from the 1980s.
Yes.
Crazy.
And so if somebody wants to sell it less because it's quartz, I am happy to buy it. And I think the mechanical version of this would be significantly more expensive. It's
Sure.
insanely nice condition. It has a gorgeous, like rosy kind of patina on the dial. It's I'd say mint condition for a vintage watch. It's, and some people say quartz, never mind, pass. This thing is amazing. And it's not like Cartier's really like celebrated for their watchmaking anyway.
Yes.
But I mean, not the watch, but the timekeeping.
Yes.
So, I would have no problem wearing this, but it'll probably sell today or tomorrow. It's really amazing. I love this thing.
It is.
Let me see this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you've obviously, in your business, you're handling a ton of watches.
Yeah.
I'm curious, maybe over just the last 12 months in 2023, what was some of the craziest things you'd seen?
God, I mean, I'm seeing crazier and crazier stuff every day just because I'm given more and more access. Like Sotheby's had one of the best, Rolex JPS Daytonas I've ever seen. I've seen, a couple of, God, I don't even know where to start. 1518, 2499s, insane old Pateks, one of one Pateks. God, I don't even know where to start. I'm so lucky. I get to see amazing watches every day.
Yeah.
I've seen so many Cartier crashes, which, before this I had only handled a few. Now I see them, I can handle them all the time. just like rare stuff. It's such a hard question. I see
Yeah.
like Paul Newman's every day. It's
Yeah.
really crazy.
You're seeing the best of the best.
Yeah, basically.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah, like rare stone dial Rolexes.
Yeah.
Cartier signed Pateks. Like there's so much amazing stuff.
So I want to ask, because we had Eric Wynn on our show. Shout out to Eric.
Shout out Eric.
And shout out to Charlie as well.
Love Charlie.
He's a G. But the thing is, what I asked Eric when he was here, having so much access and seeing so many crazy watches.
Yes.
Has there been anything that you've ever seen where you really like scratched your head and was like, I'm not too sure about this?
Oh, a lot of stuff. Yeah, a lot of stuff. I love independent watch brands, but some of the indies are like, God, you guys just like this because it's expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. There's stuff where I'm like, I have no interest whatsoever. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, as a whole, I don't care about modern Rolex, period. And that's what like probably 90% of the discussion is about.
Yes.
Is about like Kermits and whole like that. I don't care about at all, really. I mean, I understand why people buy it. And if, I think the modern Pepsi GMT is great. I think the modern Daytona is great. And I think the Le Mans Daytona is one of the best ones they've done in 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I see people see people buying like, people are still buying Panerai. Like people are,
Yeah.
I mean,
Sound like that surprises you.
Yeah. I mean, people's tastes never really surprise me, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's also the other interesting thing is the reactions I get to like in a video, I'll be talking to someone or I'll be interviewing someone and we'll mention like a Sky Dweller as a joke. And then someone in the comments like, wait, Sky Dweller? I thought they were super, super desirable. You guys are like joking about like how terrible they are.
Yes.
And then, a lot of these people have never been exposed to any other opinion other than that Rolex is number one and get a blue Sky Dweller. It's the best.
Right.
I think people are surprised being like, wait a minute, you don't like that watch that everyone in my office wants or everyone in my fraternity house wants?
It's
Like,
so
I don't
funny.
get
It's
it.
like they can't believe it.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
who doesn't want this stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
What's next for you? What do you got coming up? What's going on?
Oh God, I don't even know. Just hunting and
Calendar's
hunting.
already booked.
Yeah, hunting more watches. I mean, hopefully, like I actually don't have that much. I'm going to Japan for 3 weeks next month.
Oh, awesome.
Yep, I'm going to do some watch hunting there for sure. A lot of heavy eating for sure. Hopefully, we'll go to Watches and Wonders this year. Hopefully, we'll go to Geneva a few more times.
Yep.
For more film content every day. Buy more watches. I still buy as a collector. When someone presents me a watch, my first thought is, do I want this in my collection? Before I think, can I make money on this? Can I find a client for this? Like I'll look at a watch and I'm like, do I want this? Because I still have the collector's gene like surging through my body.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting take too, because I'm sure that also helps you determine like if you want it, it's sellable. Right? Like I can definitely move this. I'll find a client for this.
Right.
I might have a client for this.
Yeah, and I don't want people to buy stuff just because I like it because I talk about it. And I never give people the hard sell. Like I'm never like heavily pushing watches that I don't believe in.
Right.
Yeah.
And if someone doesn't want to buy the watch, that's completely fine.
Sure.
But I will still buy what I love. Like I don't know, like the Boucheron. If I were to sell it today, I don't know how much I could get for it without hyping it up.
Yes.
But for me, I'll keep buying. I'll buy 5 more that look just like that and keep them in my drawer.
Yeah.
Like, I really love them. Like the Cartier tanks, like I will keep buying tanks. And even if they never sell, even if I keep them in my drawer forever, like I will keep
Are there
buying.
any watches in your collection that you would just never, ever, ever sell?
I can't imagine selling this unless I found like,
A better example.
yeah, I don't know if there is a better example. This one's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there was one like on bracelet, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
If I found a second one and that one was in like 1% better condition, maybe I'd sell this one and keep that. I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, everything has a price.
Everything.
Everything has a price, to be honest.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun. It was
Thanks so
great
much for having me.
Yeah, of course.
You brought some really amazing pieces and shared some amazing stories. And, I look forward to continuing to develop a relationship, maybe have you back
Yeah, I
on
would
the
love
show
to.
as a guest co-host.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah.
for
Next time
sure.
We'll talk about watches.
Yeah.
But appreciate you, my man.
Yeah,
thank you
so
very
much.
much.
It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. Honor having you. To all those watching and listening, you know where to find us. You can go to wristcheckpod.com. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and audio and visual.
Maybe TikTok soon?
We're on TikTok. We're
Maybe
on
the
TikTok.
metaverse.
We're building, so find us on TikTok. And maybe one day in the metaverse, right? I don't know. We'll see what the future holds. But this has been Real, episode 75 with Mike Nouveau.
Yes.
And we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Later.
Peace.
Bye.